Mike Elk is a labor organizer, reporter for Payday Report. He's been on the show before. And one of the things I love most about you, Mike, is your accent. How are you doing with that accent this morning?
We're doing okay. I don't know how yins are doing that.
Now, wait a minute. Did you put it on extra? No, you didn't. Because that's how you do. Whenever I talk with you, that's how you sound, man. How's it going on the union?
Good.
Front?
You know, it's funny. I'm out here in LA. I was covering all this stuff happening with IATSE, and I said to someone the other night, I said, "Oh, what do yins think of this?" And they said, "Who's yins?" And I said, "Well, yins are yins." And they're like, we say instead of y'all, we say yins.
Yeah.
And these Mexican folks were looking at me like, did he just say some sort of swear word at us?
Wait a minute, you were about to get canceled for your accent? Man, listen, you got to be careful out here. You never know. Cancel culture is really strong right now. No, it's really not.
Right. Yeah, well, you know what? I wish I was back in Pittsburgh today. The big news this morning is Summer Lee, the first black state rep from Western PA, a real progressive fighter, just announced she's running for Congress. And already in her first ad, she attacked U.S. Steel for environmental waste and busting unions, which isn't something we've really seen before. So kind of wish I was back there for the fireworks today. But, there's a lot happening right now in the labor movement. There was a big struggle here. There still might be a struggle here against the major studios over the overwork issue. And a lot of these big film studios, they're making folks work 16, 18-hour days. Often, sometimes, regularly, working 14, 16-hour days, sometimes 18-hour days on these film sets. And, there was supposed to be a resolution in this contract, in this tentative agreement approached by IATSE about, creating a situation where workers wouldn't have to work those kind of hours. And after the pandemic, people just aren't willing to do that kind of work anymore. People took time off during the pandemic. They took care of their families, and they started to realize, our jobs really burn us out. Maybe there are better alternatives. And this is something we're seeing just not in, film production, but, in the most recent numbers from August, over 700,000 people quit the retail sector for other sectors. We're seeing, something like 3 million people a month change jobs. It's a very loose labor market, but part of it is that, one, a lot of people went out of the workforce, 2 million more people retired, 3 million more people quit their jobs to take care of their kids. And, we're seeing a huge, a lot of people are dealing with disability issues from COVID. So we're seeing a huge issue. And so we're seeing strikes all over.
Right.
This is part of a big trend. We have a strike tracker at Payday Report. We've tracked 1,600 strikes since the beginning of the pandemic.
Wow.
In the past year, we've tracked over 400. And that's what we know about, because oftentimes we'll find videos on TikToks of kids, doing like roll out of a McDonald's. And we'll be like, we want to put it on the strike tracker. Except y'all should have tagged the McDonald's in here.
Yeah.
So that we could figure out the address. We don't know where this place is. So that's one of our criteria.
Mike, let me jump in there, because this is Striketober. Right. And I think a lot of people just would not know, though, if not for the deer strikers, 10,000 of them striking this week and bringing this level of attention to it, I don't think people would know about any of the strikes that are going on. Why is it that the average person, who they themselves probably could very well be involved with something as simple as and it's not even simple, organizing your McDonald's, do that and walk out, do what you got to do. But why is it that people who would participate on that, they would not know that there's a broader tapestry of strikers happening all around the country, like you all are tracking at Payday Report?
Well, because one, there's not really many labor beats on reporters on the beat anymore tracking this stuff. So, it goes by the wayside. But not only that, I think the big issue right now is that, this has really captured the public imagination. There have been strikes at places like Nabisco and Frito-Lay and Kellogg and now John Deere. Those are big name brand companies. But every day we're seeing retail workers walk out of their jobs, even without the support of unions. It's just the way that covering the labor movement happens is, you really have to be paying attention to a lot of little struggles in a lot of workplaces. Maybe, like 7 or 8 people in this workplace here, 8 or 9 people in that workplace here. And unfortunately, that's not the way the media is set up. now that there's these big name brand household, Americana names like Kellogg and John Deere and possibly the Hollywood studios, now, the media is really, really paying attention.
Good.
And it's been, quite fascinating as I'm even sitting here watching, the Striketober clips come up to see the media and to see, mainstream outlets say American workers are on the march again. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. No, it's an inflection point, Mike. I think we're in an inflection point in this country, and I think you pinpointed the exact cause. I think the American people expected the American government to do a whole lot better by us during this pandemic. And when the people realized that we were on our own, they said, fine, we know how to handle this. We don't have to work for you. Not during a pandemic. We don't have to slave away at your slave wages. I want to play this first clip, and it's from the Recount. They're doing great work. This is the second clip that we played from them directly today. So I want to make sure we give Recount a shout out. But here's pretty much a summary, if I'm not mistaken, David, of the different strikes that are happening across the country. Let's take a quick look at that.
At Striketober.
10,000 employees of John Deere, members of the United Auto Workers Association, are on strike.
Memphis Kellogg workers plan to strike today.
The union representing film and television crews says its 60,000 members will strike Monday.
Workers at Heaven Hill Distillery are now in their fourth week of their demonstrations.
Local iron workers union is looking for better benefits and higher wages, and now they're walking the picket line to prove it.
St. Vincent Hospital reportedly declares an impasse on negotiations in the hospital's months-long nurses strike.
Coal miners in one community have been pushing for better wages and benefits. They've been on strike now for months.
In California and Oregon, 24,000 nurses and other healthcare workers at Kaiser Permanente voted to authorize a strike over pay and better working conditions.
We are now in day 18 of the RTC bus driver strike.
Mike, workers of the United States unite.
Yeah, and it's at a point now where people feel like they have a lot of advantage, that employers are scared. I'm going around downtown Pittsburgh and I see bars with signs in their windows saying they'll pay people a $500 hiring bonus if they stay a month. Employers are desperate to find folks, and
hold out for 1,000 people. Hold out. No, y'all better go get that 500. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. I'm out of pocket.
Well, but I'm even hearing on the radio. I'm hearing on the radio. Amazon is now offering $1,000 hiring bonuses, and they're claiming that they're raising their wages to $18 an hour. And you're seeing CVS raise their wages and PNC Bank. And I think after the pandemic, we had 700,000 people die.
Right.
Whenever there's been events like that in American history, if you look at the Civil War. The modern labor movement was founded by Civil War veterans that came back and said, well, we fought for free labor. What do we have to go back and be treated this way for?
Right.
And if you look at World War II, which, 1946 is a record year in America for strikes when people came home from the war. After any period of mass sacrifice in American history, there's always been a period where folks have demanded a lot more. And I think this is certainly going to be one of them, because so many folks, we have an interview coming out with Boots Riley. And Boots Riley said to me that the biggest mistake the ruling class ever made was coming up with the phrase essential workers.
Shout out to Boots Riley. I would love to get him on the show. Please tell him that despite the flash and all the veneer, we pretty much are in solidarity, complete in total solidarity. Tell them to come on the Benjamin Dixon Show. Now, that said, I have one more clip, Mike. I want you to take a look at before we get out of here, because you actually set it up already. It's the film workers who are striking, and I mean, there's plenty of stories of what's happening in the film industry in Georgia that has one-for-one analog with what's happening in LA. Let's take a look at that clip.
Hollywood narrowly averted a strike that could have shuttered film and TV productions across the country. Union negotiators at the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees struck a deal with the major studios Saturday afternoon, just over 24 hours ahead of a deadline that would have prompted the shutdown.
From a broad look at this deal, the tentative agreement includes wage increases for people on the bottom of the pay scale, along with those involved in streaming. Plus, it addresses meal breaks and longer rest periods between workdays and on the weekend. IATSE members will be given a fuller breakdown early this week, and then then they'll vote on whether to ratify the agreement.
The tentative agreement provides a 54-hour weekend and 10-hour turnaround time between shifts for all workers on all productions, as well as retroactive wage increases of 3% annually. The contract must still be ratified by the membership, which likely will not occur for several weeks at minimum, if not a couple of months. IATSE leadership is characterizing the deal as a success. The workers, however, seem to disagree. Many members of IATSE say they will vote against ratifying a new contract with the studios because it does not do enough to address working conditions on set. One member even saying, quote, "I feel like our leadership has let us down again."
Mike, you've been covering this. Help us to understand the friction that's happening there.
Well, the pension plan of IATSE was in a lot of trouble. And one of the things that, instead of agreeing to limit the overtime hours, which was the main concern of the strike, now the studios simply have to give people a 10-hour break. So they can work you 18 hours and then say, oh, great, after working 18 hours, go home, lay down, try to get some rest, and come back in another 10. I mean, that's outrageous, 8-hour day, people fought for that,
That's right.
And, it's outrageous to think of that kind of deal. But, what it is you have, a certain type of company unionism here. And so we're seeing a mass outpouring of opposition to this contract. You have a group on Instagram called IA_stories, which is a big rank and file group of 160,000 followers. And they've come out against the deal. And in many ways, I wrote to our readers last night because we're trying to get more funding to cover these wildcat strikes. I wrote and I said, it reminded me heavily of West Virginia teachers' strike when the union came back with a deal and workers said not enough. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's already talks of wildcat strikes. There was a pre-planned wildcat strike tomorrow against Netflix over the treatment of some trans employees there who've spoken up against Dave Chappelle. They were retaliated against after airing some concerns about Dave. That's going to be interesting to see what happens with that and, what kind of other issues pour into this, because obviously they're taking a very intersectional approach. And then on top of that, it's going to be a long ratification process. Typically, when you get a union contract, they try to bring it back to the members to vote on whether or not to ratify it within a week or two. That's what happened at John Deere. Initially, the UAW, the union leaders, wanted the workers at John Deere to accept the contract, and they voted overwhelmingly not to accept it, and they told the union leaders they want to strike anyhow. And so I think we're seeing a movement very similar to the beginnings of the Red for Ed movement 3 years ago, where people are being a lot more militant. People are much more connected to other workers. I mean, I'm in a lot of these union Facebook groups, and workers from one plant will talk to workers from another plant, and we're having those kind of cross-movement dialogues that I don't think we would necessarily be able to have even 10 years ago. And that's a lot of what happened during the teachers' strike when, teachers from West Virginia helped inspire teachers from Oklahoma and Arizona.
Right. That was a good time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a great time. We flew all over there. And so we're out in
Mike,
Hollywood this week talking to folks and figuring out what's going on.
Let me jump in there only because we're coming up at the end of the hour, and I want to dovetail the conversation and make sure that there's no disconnect, because we speak unapologetically about Black issues, and I see no separation between workers' issues and Black issues, because when I drive through the I-10 corridor through the South, I see nothing but manufacturing plants, car manufacturing, the Kia plant. You go in Jackson, Mississippi, you got the Nissan plant, and you got in Georgia, you got the Alabama, the Bamazonians that are in Alabama. You got Amazon plants everywhere, and all of the people working in these plants, everywhere I see in the South, they're all Black. So would you just tie in that the connectivity with a few moments that we have left, because I just don't see a separation between workers' issue and Black issues, because Black folks are workers out here. I know you're a white man, but I'm pretty sure you're adept at speaking to that.
Well, I'm Jewish, so
there you go.
Asterisk there.
There you go.
Asterisk on white. But anyhow, I think unions, people forget they're not about wages, they're about respect, right? And if you look at the numbers, African Americans are twice as likely to support unions as white Americans because of the issues of respect on the job. And I think all too often we see the class reductionists try to boil this down to just wage and hour, when it's really about respect and a sense of dignity on the job. And if you look at what's happening, particularly these retail worker walkouts, they're heavily in African American communities. There's Black TikTok is really driving a lot of this movement. Unions haven't really done much to encourage these retail walkouts. But, if you look at Black TikTok in particular, it's really driven these. And you're looking now, I mean, I'm seeing, we saw there was a school bus strike of Black drivers in Savannah. There have been issues with DeKalb. There have been a bunch of municipalities, small municipalities I've seen throughout the South in places like Greenville, Mississippi, where Black employees are walking out. And I think, if you look at what happened with BLM, and I think BLM plays such a big role in driving this movement. And we've shown that, we've shown, the month after George Floyd, there were over 600 strikes in this country in 1 month. And, we're looking at 400 in the past year. So I really think, one lesson for the labor movement to really learn is we really have to do more to encourage, striking over race. I mean, last summer when there were the NBA strikes, I thought, there's going to be this huge ripple effect in all these other industries. And the labor movement did nothing to sort of say, hey, let's walk out too with the NBA players,
That's right.
like all the other sports. And so I think, now like the John Deere story, you look at it, I mean, there've been 700,000 retail workers quit in the last, in August, right? There's 10,000 John Deere workers on strike. It's 10,000 white guys in the middle of America. That's a narrative they really like a lot, at a name brand company. But you're seeing far more than 10,000 Black workers walk off of retail jobs every month. So it goes to show you how things are being covered.
There it is. Wow, I had no idea how important that last question was going to be, because therein lies the solution. I've got to find these Black TikTokers who are striking, and we want to bring them on the show and make sure that we put forward the narrative that this is being driven by Black workers who are just saying, hey, this is technology and we have the right to be respected. Mike Elk, Payday Report, union organizing labor reporter. Thank you so much for all the coverage that you're doing, man.
Thank you for having me on.